So with Blade Runner 2049 about to come out, I decided to do my top 10 best sequels. These are the sequels that, at least in my opinion, I think surpass the original, and some of them are as good as the original film. But keep in mind, this list is extremely opinionated. If you don't agree with this list, that's fine. But if you do, fantastic. Just keep in mind, these are the 10 sequels that I think are the best. So, and another thing, this video will contain spoilers. So for those of you who haven't seen some of these movies, which I'm sure some of you haven't, this video will contain spoilers. So you have been warned. So before we dive into the top 10, here are some honorable mentions. Captain America, The Winter Soldier. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. How to Train Your Dragon 2. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. And Toy Story 2. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into number 10. And number 10 is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So, I'm not a diehard Star Trek fan. Am I a fan of it? Yes. Do I like it? Yes. But I don't love it. I'm not like a diehard Trekkie or anything. But if I were to pick one Star Trek movie to be my favorite out of all of them, it'll be Wrath of Khan. Now, I haven't seen the first Star Trek movie that came out in 1979, I believe, but Wrath of Khan I have seen, and I think it is the best Star Trek movie ever made. It takes Star Trek to the next level. It's darker, it has a very intriguing story. Khan is a great villain, probably my favorite villain in all of Star Trek history, and the ending. When Spock sacrificed himself, how can you not tear up during that scene? It's just so sad. And it's probably the most saddest Star Trek moment in history. Alright, let's move on to number 9. And number 9 is SpiderMan II. SpiderMan 2 is not only the second best Spider-Man movie of all time. First is Spider-Man Homecoming. But it's one of the best comic book movies in history. It has a more emotional story. The action is more intense. It has better special effects. It focuses more on Peter Parker and Mary Jane's relationship. It is a fun movie, but at the same time, it's not just a superhero movie. It feels like an actual movie. Sure, yeah, Spider-Man is supposed to be fun. Yeah, it's a fun movie. But Spider-Man 2, it feels like an actual movie. And it's a very emotional movie. Now, in terms of the Spider-Man movies, Dr. Otto Octavius is probably the best in all the Spider-Man movies. His character in Spider-Man 2... Sure, yeah, he is a superhero villain. Yeah, he's diabolical. He's what you expect from a villain in a superhero movie. But at the same time, he feels like an actual character with a very heartbreaking and emotional backstory. And that's what I love the most about Spider-Man 2. It's a great movie, and it's not only a great superhero movie, but it's a great movie with emotional scenes and a very intriguing story. Alright, let's move on to number 8. And number 8 is Aliens. The original Alien is an iconic classic. It's one of the best horror movies ever made. And Aliens, I think, is even better. If I were to sum up Aliens in one word, it would be badass. Sigourney Weaver once again plays Ripley in this movie, and Oh boy, you do not want to mess with her character in this movie. She will mess you up. Yes, the original Alien is, like I said, an iconic classic, and it always will be. But Aliens, I honestly think, is even better. Alright, let's move on to number 7. And number 7 is Mad Max Fury Road. So Mad Max Fury Road is the 4th movie in the Mad Max film series. First one being Mad Max, second one is Road Warrior, and the third one is Beyond Thunderdome, and the fourth one is, like I said, Fury Road. And out of all of them, Fury Road is my favorite. It is insane. What's great about Mad Max Fury Road is you don't have to watch the other movies first in order to know what's going on. You can just watch Fury Road without knowing what the other movies were about. That's one of the reasons that makes Fury Road a great sequel. Tom Hardy replaces Mel Gibson as Mad Max in this movie, and Tom Hardy is an excellent choice to play Mad Max. He killed it in this movie, and he was so respectful to Mel Gibson's original performance in the other Mad Max movie. Let's move on to number 6. And number 6 is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Like what I said with Aliens, Terminator 2 is a sequel that I think surpasses the original. And yes, the original Terminator is an iconic classic. It's a great movie. But just like with everyone else, Terminator 2, I think, is even better. And not only that, I not only think it's one of the best sequels ever made, but I think it's one of the best action movies ever made, period. Arnold Schwarzenegger, once again, plays the Terminator in this movie, and he knocks it out of the park as his character. Like, every time he plays his character in a Terminator movie, he is great. Even when it's crappy, like Terminator Genesis, he is still really good. And I think the action scenes are very intense and very intriguing, and the special effects are phenomenal, and they left a huge impact on special effects in movies forever. And the T-1000, I think, is one of the best villains in movie history. He's very intimidating, he's scary, and you do not want to mess with him. And Terminator 2 is surprisingly heartwarming. Like, it focuses on John Connor as a kid, and he has a very strong relationship with the Terminator, and he has like a father relationship with young John Connor in this movie. It's surprisingly very emotional. Let's move on to number 5. And number 5 is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. So, just in case if you don't know, I love Lord of the Rings. I tried reading the books once, but I couldn't get through them because they're really long and the text in them are really short. But I love the movies. I've seen all the Lord of the Rings movies, and I love every single one of those movies. And as for The Hobbit, let's just say I'm not a huge fan. And if I were to pick one movie in the Lord of the Rings film series to be my favorite, it would be, you guessed it, Return of the King. I not only think Return of the King is the best Lord of the Rings movies, and I not only think it's one of the best sequels of all time, but I think it's one of the best movies ever made, period. It's just a perfect movie. It's epic, it has great special effects, and when it's over, you're just like, wait, it's over? Oh man. When Frodo and Sam finally reach Mordor to throw the ring into the fiery pit in the volcano of Mordor, you're just like, you get excited, but at the same time, you're just sad because you don't know what's going to happen to them. And then the ending comes, and I cannot count. It's one of those endings where I get really teared up because Lord of the Rings is a film series that means so much to me. And when it was over, I was just like, oh, it's over. And just in case if you guys didn't know, Return of the King was the first and only movie in the Lord of the Rings film series to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And it deserved that award, and I am so happy that it won it. And Return of the King also holds the record with Titanic and Ben-Hur as the movie to win the most Oscars. Let's move on to number 4. And number 4 is
Toy Story 3.
In my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of you people may agree with me on this, all 3 Toy Story movies are the best animated movies ever made. And Toy Story 3, I think, is the best animated movie sequel ever made. One of the reasons that makes Toy Story 3 a great movie is because it reminds us of childhood, and childhood for everyone ends. And Toy Story 3 does not hold back on sharing that message. And if you did not cry during the end of Toy Story 3, if you did not cry when Andy gave away Woody, Buzz, and all the other toys away to Bonnie, you have no heart and you have no soul. Toy Story 3 is intense, it's dark, it's funny, it's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming. It's just a great movie overall. Let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight is not only one of the best sequels ever made, but it's, in my opinion, the best comic book movie ever made, period. This was the movie that took Batman to the next level. And director Christopher Nolan did an excellent job directing this movie, and he also directed the other Dark Knight movies, including Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. And I do love those movies as well, but I think Dark Knight is the best out of all those movies. And because I'm talking about The Dark Knight, I think it's extremely appropriate to give a quick shout out to Heath Ledger. Okay, Heath Ledger probably gives the best performance in any superhero movie to date when he played the Joker in this movie. It is so sad what happened to him. I get so sad every time I think about his death and what happened to him. He was such a talented actor, and he killed it as the Joker, and thank God he won that Oscar for his performance. His performance as the Joker will live on forever. Let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is
The Empire Strikes Back.
Now you guys are probably thinking, oh, you put The Empire Strikes Back as number 2? Well, there was another movie that I saved for my number 1 spot, and you guys probably can guess what it is, just instantly. But anyway, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars movie, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think it does what a sequel should do. It takes Star Wars to the next level. It's darker, it's more intense, it has a much better story, and it has some great new additions like Yoda and Darth Vader. It's a lot more badass and more intense in this movie, and we get a quick glimpse at what the Emperor looks like in this movie, and this movie also contains probably the greatest plot twist in movie history, when Darth Vader revealed to be Luke's father. And still to this day, I'm still shocked by that. And I think a huge majority of people are still shocked by it too.
I am your father.
Alright, let's move on to number 1. And my number 1 best sequel is
The Godfather Part 2.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably surprised by this, but I think Godfather Part 2 is the best sequel ever made. The way I see it, there are two types of people. People who think Godfather Part 2 is just as great as the first Godfather, and people who think Godfather Part 2 is even better. Honestly, I'm in between those two. I think Godfather Part 2 is not only as phenomenal as the first Godfather, but I think it's even better. So Godfather Part 2 focuses on Michael Corleone, who is once again played by Al Pacino. He is next in line to be the next Godfather, and that's when he makes all these brutal choices that are extremely heartbreaking. And seeing this guy just makes all these tough choices just frustrates you, and at the same time just makes you sad. And one of my favorite parts about Godfather Part 2 is when it focuses on a young Vito Corleone, who is played by Robert De Niro in his first standout performance. Those are the flashback scenes, and I love those scenes. Those made me appreciate Vito Corleone more as a character. And just in case if you guys didn't know this, but here's a cool fact. The Godfather Part 2 was the first sequel in history to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Alright guys, that's it for my top 10 best sequels. And I have a question for you guys. What are your favorite sequels of all time? Whatever they are, comment below and let me know. And like always, if you want to see more of my videos, just be sure to subscribe.